Hey guys, welcome to part 4 of UK political history, and for real, I promise, this really will be the last video. There's no way this possibly takes more than 15 minutes. Okay, so I got cut off because I wasn't paying attention to my time before, but I was talking about how we have this period, right up until Maggie Thatcher, of what is called the collectivist consensus, and what that meant was that following World War II, we have this period where both the Labour and the Conservative parties both adopted essentially a pro-social democracy sort of system of politics. Even the Conservative Party, which tended to be more free market, still emphasized the idea of social welfare programming. When you consider Britain's concerns, when you consider the UK's concerns following World War II, you have to remember that they were on rationing for food up until the early 1950s. So there was a lot more government involvement in the UK in terms of people's daily lives, and there had been for a long time. The UK definitely got the worst of it in comparison to like the United States in World War II. So the government had a much more active role in rebuilding. So we have this period called collectivist consensus, where essentially everything was sort of pro-social democracy, even the Conservative Party. And then that changes when we hit about here. And at this point, we are seeing some global problems and changes in terms of the economic system. And what we see is a sort of differentiation between the policies of the Conservative Party and the policies of Labour. And the Conservative Party becomes much more associated with the idea of free market liberalism, and an embrace, in fact, of sort of a return to more free market privatization of industries. And that's going to be really the hallmark of Maggie Thatcher's period. So we're going to move on up here to kind of the 1970s and talk a little bit about modern UK political history. So last little bit here. So what we have is this period of collectivist consensus. I've already kind of gone over that. Both the Labour and Conservative parties embrace the idea of supportive government programs to rebuild British society following World War II. It really was necessary. One of the great successes of this program was the creation of the NHS, the National Health Service, and this is their socialized medical system, and it's considered sort of sacrosanct by both the Conservative and the Labour parties. Now, the Conservative Party does have definitely criticisms of the NHS, but broadly speaking, it's considered rather political suicide to even suggest the idea that the National Health Service be undone and that they privatize their healthcare market. That is one of those things that is very distinctly different from US political life than UK political life. So what we see is there's a growing period of economic stagnation and crisis in the 1970s, and this is something that actually also occurred in the United States. Part of this was a result of oil instability due to the Iranian, OPEC and all sorts of stuff that was going on. But ultimately, what the Conservative Party did was they were putting forth a number of economic criticisms, basically saying that the government was overspending, that through nationalization of industry they had lowered competition, and that it was necessary for the state to be less involved with economic matters. And this was really the primary platform of Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was the first female prime minister, and she served from 1979 until 1991. She pushed back against what was called the nanny state, and that's a term that you will still hear in British politics today. They talk about the nanny state in the same sort of way that people in the United States talk about the welfare state. And it was an adoption of more neoliberal economic policies. Margaret Thatcher was very much in favor of free market economics, free trade zones, things like that. And she wanted to see a privatization of a number of state services, particularly with regards to mass transit. She was deeply controversial. She made huge cuts to the benefits for labor unions. She cut expenditures on public education, public housing, all sorts of things. Some people really loved Margaret Thatcher. Many people really hated her. There were periods of all sorts of riots and all sorts of stuff that occur in the mid 80s. She was good buddies with Ronald Reagan. The two of them were good friends. And she was ultimately ousted from power in 1991 when her party was voted out, kind of showing sort of the dissatisfaction that had grown over time with the growth of neoliberal policies. So we're going to stop there in terms of sort of modern political history, because after 1991, it really is kind of the current political structure that we need to get into. Now, you do have an assignment I need you to take care of. If you are listening to this in class and you are absent, please go to the blog, and you will see that there is an instruction there for you to choose one of a number of categories to look at. You will need your reading packet for 2.2, so make sure you have that out. If you don't have it, you will need to borrow off of somebody, look on with them, and you need to draw for me a map of how power is used in one aspect of the political institutions that are listed on the blog. So you can either use your phones for this, or you can get a laptop out of the laptop cart. But I do expect you to have this done for me the next time I see you. All right? So thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry I can't show you the SNL punk rock video. I will show it to you maybe in class. I'd rather be able to talk a little bit about it. Okay? All right, guys. I will see you soon. I hope you have a good day.